Hey, what's going on? My name is Jake, and in this video, I'm breaking down the newest Hell Let Loose refresh that just landed. What really stands out first is the Remagen side of things, because this is where the pacing of a map gets a serious rethink. The map layout has been updated to reduce those brutal bottlenecks that can make the entire fight feel locked to one crossing, and the historical setting has been moved forward to March 12, 1945. Multiple pontoon bridges have been added, the Ludendorff Bridge has been widened, and the lower gangway has been redesigned so movement from the riverbanks and bridge deck feels less awkward. On top of that, the central capture point is now the bridge by default, and terrain changes are meant to create more realistic airhead deployment spots. In plain language, that means players should have more ways to cross, more ways to flank, and fewer moments where the whole match turns into a single-file traffic jam. The patch also brings general visual and performance improvements to the map. So this is not just about gameplay flow. It is also about making the battlefield feel cleaner and more stable overall. The artillery changes are probably the most interesting part of this patch, because the whole system has been reworked in a way that makes it feel more active and more team-oriented. The old artillery engineer role has been renamed Operator, and artillery support has become Gunner, while the observer loadout has been adjusted so the first kit loses its sidearm and the AP mine gets moved to the second loadout. The Soviet artillery squad also now uses the Mosin Nagant M38, and artillery squads share kill credit from primary artillery weapons, which is a nice change for teamwork and recognition. On the gameplay side, artillery near a munitions node slowly regenerates ammunition, one shell every 30 seconds, and the commander's artillery resupply cost drops from 150 to 120 munitions. At the same time, dismantling artillery now takes 30 seconds instead of 10, although high explosive weapons can still destroy it quickly. That tells me the developers want artillery to feel less like a disposable nuisance and more like a real battlefield asset that squads have to protect, supply, and commit to using. The patch also adds a static artillery system, and this is where things get even more layered. Artillery squads can now build one static gun within the first 2 sectors for 50 supplies, and the cooldown is shared between HQ artillery and player-built artillery. Friendly crews can dismantle their own gun without triggering the cooldown, which is a smart quality-of-life detail. But placement is restricted if the terrain is uneven or the firing line is blocked. Then there are the self-propelled artillery changes, which remove the operational range restriction from all SPA vehicles and let them fire while moving at low speeds. Vehicles can also shoot immediately after stopping without having to mess around with gear changes, and AP rounds have been renamed heat rounds for most SPA units. That whole package makes these vehicles feel less like awkward support machines and more like flexible battlefield tools. On top of that, several SPAs got balance adjustments. The Sherman 105 has faster turret rotation and a smaller blast radius. The KV-2 gets a larger explosion radius but slower reload speed. The Sturmpanzer gains stronger frontal armor and a larger blast radius. The Churchill AVRE now fires a high-damage demolition projectile but costs 360 munitions to spawn. The Bishop's range goes up to 800 meters, and the Panzer III also. N gets a quicker reload and faster turret rotation. That is a lot of tuning, but the common thread is obvious. These vehicles are being pushed into more distinct roles instead of all feeling interchangeable. One of the simplest but most impactful changes is the flare gun rework. Flare usage is now tied to a 5-minute cooldown per player, and that cooldown stays active even after death, redeploy, or role change, with the change applying to recon and artillery roles. That matters because it shuts down the old pattern where players could use redeploy tricks to get around the intended pacing and keep flares coming back too often. In other words, scouting information should matter more, and teams should have to think harder about when they spend that tool. The patch also improves console matchmaking by prioritizing the Find Match option for faster entry into official servers, while still leaving the Enlist screen available for community servers and specific maps. The developers also say the system is being prepared for expanded search filters later on, which is a nice sign that they are building this into something more usable long-term. And then there is the cleanup work, which honestly is the part that makes a patch like this feel complete. The notes mention fixes for missing bar reload sound effects while using bipod, AFG42 bipod clipping problem, missing cause of death messages for bleeding, drowning, falls, and melee, plus collision and asset alignment issues across multiple maps. There are also fixes for spawning and environment problems in Smolensk sectors, visual issues in Stalingrad and St. Marie-du-Mont, and improvements to Archon stability along with incorrect mode listings. That might not sound as dramatic as a new map or a shiny weapon, but this is the kind of stuff that makes matches feel fairer, smoother, and less frustrating in the moment.